Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And as you can see, I'm in the car, and if you've ever watched any of our videos, then that means it's time for a little car chat. So I'm just going to chat a little bit and talk a little bit more about my journey, and I'm going straight into part 2 of my husband got a job at the very place that I ran from. So if you love a little story time coupled with some inspiration, watch this video, because it's funny how life really does come full circle. And sometimes we think like it's coincidence, but if we really pay attention, we can see that our steps are orchestrated by God. And the reason I wanted to do a part 2 or a separate video was because in the last video, you guys saw Kimar share that he works for the post office, and I didn't really want to take away from him wanting to share his story. He wanted to share that with you all, and so I didn't really want to spin it and make it about me. So I said, hey, you know what, I'll do a part 2. And I'll just share a little bit more of my story and my journey, because I did work at the post office before. I worked at the post office for a long time, many years. I worked at the post office for a very long time, and I hated it. I hated it. You can ask anybody that knows me or anybody that I used to work with, and they will tell you she hated working at the daggone post office. But anyway, okay, so back to the beginning. So I was just a young girl fresh out of the Navy and didn't have a job, didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And at the time, the post office was like the place to get a job. So it was like, if you got a job at the post office, you were set for life. Everybody wanted a job at the post office, even me. So I, filled out the application, took the test. I was on like the waiting list. Back then, they had like, a waiting list. You had to take a test, and they just kind of put you in a list, a long, line of people. And when they come up to your number, they will call you and say, hey, it's your time. And so, and I guess, maybe because I was a veteran, not guess, but veterans have like veterans preference over people who are not veterans. So that was kind of like a plus, but it still took me a very long time. I don't even remember exactly how long, maybe like a year and a half for them to call me. And when I got that call, baby, I was super excited. I was stoked. I was like, I got a job at the post office. So you couldn't tell me nothing. And don't get me wrong, like the post office is a good place to work. It was a good place to work back then, and it's still a good place to work even now. But it was just something about the management. And I'm not even going to say the management, because I worked in management for a period of time, and I had some good like managers above me. But that first level supervisory line, baby, they got some issues. And I hated it. Like I really hated like the supervisors, my direct reports who were over me. Because here I am, I'm young, I got a small child, and they don't care nothing about like what you got going on. Like they strictly there to manage that mail and move that mail. And I get it, I understand it, but you still got to have like some compassion and empathy when you're working over people and supervising people. And baby, they was lacking. They didn't have none of that. They was lacking in that department. I mean, like I remember times where I would be at the clock ready. Back then, they called you a PTF, part-time flexible, when you first started. And I would be at the clock, and the manager or the supervisor would say, where you going? You can't get off yet. You got to work overtime. You got to work 4 more hours. How you coming up to somebody? Like you didn't know this before it was time for me to get off. How you coming up to somebody when they get ready to clock out talking about they got to work another 4 hours? And I can't even tell you how many times she got cussed out. And how many times I did not work overtime, because I was a hothead like back then. But it was just stuff like that, like just really bad management, not knowing what they're doing, not really knowing how to like lead people. They were really like managers, not leaders. And another reason I hated it was because I was working second shift, and I hated going in at 3 o'clock and getting off at 11 o'clock. At night, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. Or if I had to stay over, and work overtime, I wouldn't get off till like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I hated that because I had my daughter, she was young, and I felt like, I was missing out on her life, and I was missing out like on life, because normal people go to work from 9 to 5, and I'm saying this lightly because you do have people who work all times of the day. But for me and what I wanted, I was like, normal people work 9 to 5 and then they get off, get off work and still have like a life after work. But when I'm off during the day, all my friends are working, and then I had to work weekends. So it was just a lot. And I was just like, oh my God, I hate this. Like, I don't want to do this for 30 years. But I will say, like, as time goes on and you bid on jobs, you slowly get into a better position, because by the time I left the post office, it took me probably six or 7 years to get on day shift, even though I still had to work weekends, but I was off at 3:30. But by the time I left the post office, I had, good days and good hours. I worked 7 to 3:30 and I was off Sunday and Monday. And you couldn't beat that unless you had Saturday and Sunday off. But I loved having Sunday and Monday off. And the post office was a good place to work then, and it's still a good place to work now. And it was still a blessing for me because I was able to buy my first home, and I was still able to take care of my daughter as well. And even though, I still made good money and I was able to take care of my daughter and I was able to buy a home, and, there were still times where I struggled because you had to work overtime. Like, the cost of living is high. And so even though I made good money, they took a lot in taxes if you worked overtime. And so it's almost like I had to work overtime to still just try to make it, And so, that was the stuff that I didn't like about it. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want a job making the money that I make on overtime, working 40 hours a week. So I decided that I was going back to school. And people would say, like, why are you going back to school? You ain't gonna never find a job making the money that you make here at the post office. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm killing myself in overtime to like make this money. I'm tired. I don't even have like energy to spend the money when I'm off, because you're working 6 days. Sometimes if it's the holidays, you might be working 7 days a week and you're working 12 hours a day. I was just like, this ain't for me. Like, I gotta go back to school. I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And it took me about 10 years to get my degree. And I say that because some of you have been waiting for a long time for your blessing. And I'm here to tell you that I'm a living witness that is coming. I'm a living witness. And I'm here to tell you that your blessing is coming. It took me about 10 years. When I first started out, I was just kind of taking like one class here and there. I would drop out of, class. I was getting the GI Bill, so I would kind of take a class just to get the money to go to school. The GI Bill is like money that they give you for taking classes and going to school if you were in the military. So I was just kind of like, I need this money, so I'm going to sign up for a class and I'm going to get my GI Bill. And but I would, fail the class or drop out of the class. And so the first couple of years, I was just kind of going through a cycle and a circle, and I didn't have my head on straight and didn't know what I wanted to do and didn't have any focus. And, but one day I just told myself, what you gonna do? Because you wasting time and money. And you say you hate this job. You're going to be stuck here because you're wasting time and money and you're wasting away your life. And it was then that I made the decision, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my degree. And from that moment on, I don't even remember like how many years into the 10 that I was, but I started taking classes full time and I was like, baby, I'm serious about this degree. So I went back to school, and when I got my day job, I started going to school at night. And I did that for 10 years. And when I got my bachelor's degree and started working on my master's degree, I said, you know what, when my daughter finishes school, I'm going to be finished with school and I'm going to get my whole life together. I am going to get my life back from working all of these hours, working and going to school full time all these years, raising my daughter, and I'm going to get my life back and I'm going to be living my best life And let me just tell y'all, that's exactly what happened. And I pushed myself and I finished school. And when I finished school, I graduated May of 2014. Let me just break it down for you. I graduated May 2nd, 2014 at 7 o'clock p.m. And you guys know, if you've seen any videos or any car chats that I've done, and I've kind of talked about like numbers, I'm a numbers person in terms of like numerology, and I do believe that like numbers have significance. And when I finished my degree, it was my master's degree. It was 2014, which is 2, 1, and 4 is 7. So it was a year of 7, and 7 is the number of completion. And it was also May 2nd, which May is the 5th month, and the second day of the 5th month at 7 o'clock p.m. I got my master's degree, and I really believe like my steps were like ordered and orchestrated by God for me to graduate at, that appointed time with my degree. And then I saw this comment on Kimar's video that he did on the last video. And this was confirmation that I should do this video, because this person said, I got a new job and found my husband. And that's exactly my story. I got a new job and I found my husband. So I got my degree in 2014, and I was just kind of like frustrated because I was looking for a new job. I was waiting for like this next chapter of my life to start. And in December of 2014, I wrote in my journal, like, Lord, 7 is the number of completion. 8, which would have been 2015, 2, 1, and 5 is the number 8. I was like, 8 is the number of new beginnings. And I said that when my daughter graduated and finished school, I was going to finish school. I was going to get my whole life together. I don't know what you have in store for me, but I'm open. I'm open for it. And I went to Jamaica in April of 2015, and I met Kimar. And then we got married that same year. And then the following year is when I got my new job. And they were so surprised, like, you got a job, you leaving the post office? Because it was unheard of. Like, you get a job at the post office and you stay here until it's time for you to retire. But I manifested what I wanted in my life because I knew that that was not it. And it was a good stepping stone. I don't want to take nothing away from the post office. And really, to be honest, like, I think it's just like perfect timing for Kimar, because we were kind of like on the fence, like, what are we going to do about the truck? Should we just keep running it? Some people will say, I don't know how you weren't making money. We never said we were not making money. We said that Kimar was working like twice as hard. And I was like, babe, like, you got to work smart, not hard. You're running like 3 loads a day, just trying to make the same amount of money that you used to make on one load. And I know things changed and we had to make some adjustments, but Kimar was tired. Like, he was getting up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, coming home 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, baby, you got to just work smart, not harder. So we just kind of started talking about like, what are our options? What are we going to do? Because it's a mindset thing too. When you go from working for yourself for basically your duration that you've been in the U.S. to working for somebody else and having somebody else stand over you. But knowing Kimar, Kimar, we already kind of knew like he's going to apply for driving jobs because of course he has his CDL and he has his license. And we knew that he was going to, do something where he still had like freedom, to kind of be independent and still just kind of work, still be out driving. And to be honest, like, I think it was orchestrated by God. Like, his steps were ordered, because even back when I applied for the post office, it took a long time. But for Kimar, and I think even more in more recent years, it still takes a long time to get on at the post office. But it only took Kimar 2 months from the time he applied to the first day of work. And he didn't even really apply at a lot of places. I think he might have applied at like 3 places, because it was kind of like, I'll just apply at a couple of places, and if something comes through, but if not, I'm just gonna push my truck, because Kimar loves his truck. And the post office called. Well, they don't call, they send an email and basically say, you know, this is your job offer and you can either accept or decline. And of course he accepted it, and it's been really a really good fresh start. Like just the transition, we couldn't have asked for a better transition. And the reason I really wanted to do this video, because I'm probably all over the place with it, but the reason I really wanted to do this video was just to encourage you to, whenever you have like something in your heart and you have a dream that you want to see come to pass, you got to put in the work. You got to, like, faith without works is dead. So you really got to put in the work. But more importantly, don't let somebody else deter you from your dream. Because when I was going back to school, when I decided to go back to school, so many people tried to deter me and say, you know, what are you going back to school for? That's the craziest thing ever. And you crazy for going back to school. Like, this is a good job and blah, blah, blah. And it is a good job. It really is a good job, but it just wasn't for me. And I didn't really want to work. I still have friends even now who are working a lot of overtime. And I didn't want to work overtime. I like my work-life balance. You know, I wanted to travel in my life. I have things that I want to do in my life that did not include me working 12 hours, 6 to 7 days a week. And so I manifested. I said, I'm going to get a job making the money that I make at the post office on 40 hours a week. And I'm exceeding that now. So don't let somebody tell you what's for you. When you have a dream in your heart and you have prayed to God about it, work towards your dream and keep pressing forward and believe in yourself, because I believed in myself. I knew what I wanted. Even when I met Kimar, and I still kind of, you know, was on the fence, like, this got to be a joke. Like, God, you got to be joking. I knew still deep down in my heart that God was orchestrating my steps, just some things that were taking place. And, you know, just like I said, if you pay attention to the signs, then you know that it's God. Even though sometimes in the flesh, like spiritually, we know it's of God, but in the reality, in the realm of things, and physically, we're doubting. In the flesh, we're doubting, but God is still in control. That's what I'm trying to say. God is still in control. And I followed my heart. I followed the steps that were laid out before me, and I manifested this wonderful life that I'm living now. And so I hope that that is the takeaway that you all get from this video. So don't let nobody deter you. Keep pressing, keep pushing. And even sometimes when you got to pivot, in Kimar's, you know, case, when you got to pivot, it's okay to pivot. Just don't stop. You know the song, we fall down, but we get up. Get back up and keep going. Refocus, keep pressing forward. And those things that you want in life, you're going to see them come to pass. Stay blessed.